is good evidence for design. Now, the last example I want to walk us through is maybe one of the stickiest. I taught a class on origins when I first started at ICR. We had a Master's of Science Ed program, and I gave this example to my students as an exercise. And one of them came back to me and said, "This is really shaking me. I don't know what the answer is. This is a real bothersome problem." And so we walked through it. But this is the way the evolutionists argue it. You can find it in some of their websites. The analogy works like this. Let's say you're a teacher, and some of you are, and some of you homeschool moms would teach your kids. Let's say you have two students who have been asked to write a short answer or an essay question for a test. And they give you an answer, each of them, that looks kind of like this. First student says, "The political rise and presidency of Abraham Lincoln bears striking resemblance to the current president's history and policy, both beginning as legislators from Illinois. Obama and Lincoln in the office treated the law," and on the answer goes. And student number 2 submits an identical answer, same word, same sentence structure. It's 100% the same. Now, you might begin to suspect, as a sharp teacher, that perhaps they copied from one another. Now, if you were to confront them, they might vigorously deny it and say, no, we just studied the same material. We just happened to memorize the same answer. Well, excuse me, my phone keeps making noise, so we'll put it down there. If you were looking through their answers and you found not only identical words that are spelled the same, but words that were spelled wrongly, and both of them misspelled them, now your case for plagiarism gets a little stronger. Your case for cheating. What's the chance that both students are going to misspell a basic word the same way, the same spot, just by chance at the same time? And if you found not one but several grammatical and spelling errors, and they all show up in the same spot, same paragraph, same point in the sentence, the chance of all that occurring just naturally is pretty low. Another way of saying it is there's a really high probability that one of these students copied from the other. The more shared mistakes you find, the stronger your case for plagiarism. And so the evolutionists apply this logic then to the genetic realm. We have a DNA sequence, about 3 billion letters, that specifies our anatomy and physiology. Chimpanzees have a very long DNA sequence as well. The evolutionists will say we can find similarities, but beyond similarities in DNA sequences, we can find shared mistakes. You can find, let's say at position 100,295,342, a letter that's been changed, and we can see that this is a mistake. Well, you can find that very same change in the chimpanzee sequence, and not just one change in those 3 billion letters, but multiple. This is just a sequence for illustrative purposes. So therefore, the evolutionist says, both of these sequences must have been plagiarized, inherited, from a common ancestor who also had these mistakes. One of their strongest arguments for common ancestry. So what's the problem with this? Any guesses? Anyone want to take a crack at it? Well, let's do a little exercise. Here are two sentences, one on the left, one on the right. And I want you to look at the sentence on the left and find the mistake, not just any mistake, but the mistake that's shared with the sentence on the right. Any volunteers? No Russian speakers. Okay, not fair. Let's make it easier. That was Cyrillic alphabet. Let's use an alphabet we're more familiar with. Same thing, sentence on the left compared to the sentence on the right. Find not the shared word, the shared mistake. No German speakers. Well, here's the English sentence. It's, of course, a trick question. I just plugged this into Google Translate. A Russian speaker said there actually is an inaccuracy in that first sentence. But the point is this: if you don't speak the language, you can't identify mistakes. So the question is, do we speak the language of DNA well enough, or do the evolutionists speak the language of DNA well enough to identify shared mistakes between humans and chimpanzees? Well, when the human DNA sequence was first published in 2001 by Francis Collins and his group, the view among scientists was that 95% of those 3 billion letters were useless. They were just leftovers from the long 6 million year history of evolution for humans, and that they did nothing. Well, another group of secular scientists published a paper in 2012, where they systematically went through all 3 billion letters. This was an enormously time-intensive, labor-intensive experiment. A whole bunch of different biochemical assays. And they found preliminary evidence for function for 80% of those 3 billion letters. So 2001, 95% do nothing. 2012, 80% do something, and that number is probably going to go up. That's a complete about-face. So if you went to Russia and said, yeah, I speak 5% of the language, how many of you would volunteer as a proofreader? It'd be silly. So the problem with this argument that there are shared mistakes between humans and chimpanzees is that we're really bad at finding them. And these same data have established function for a lot of those sequences people formerly labeled junk and mistakes. And there are more arguments for evolution, but I think these 4 top arguments illustrate the main point. Evolution is utterly unconvincing. Those evidences evolutionists cite are unconvincing because there are equally valid, if not better, alternative explanations that they just completely ignore.